Hey, everybody. Welcome to Pro Mindset Podcast today. This is your host, Craig Domann. Today, I'm going to chop it up with a young man by way of Washington, D.C. area, Juan Lee. Juan, welcome to Pro Mindset.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, so off air, we just had to get some things straight because Juan is an author. He's a podcaster. He's a lover of life. He's a veteran of our military services. Has done a lot of things, but he's written a book titled Love Made Simple. So after 40 years of marriage, I just had to let him know. I think he's messed up. I think he's warped. Love is not simple. So tell.
Well, hello. You're right. It's if you get the perception and you're thinking that it's simple and you go like you translate that into easy, it's absolutely wrong because it's absolutely not. I didn't say it was easy. I said it was simple. Make it clear. I'm making love clear, not easy. And 40 years of marriage, I'm a ways behind you. I've been married 28 years next month.
Congrats.
And yeah, by no means did I say easy. I said simple. Let's make it clear. Let's make it so that we can navigate this thing. And it's just like what your podcast is called, the pro mindset. I have a love mindset. If you can gain that love mindset, it makes it simple.
Well, I think I'm advocating for just to avoid you getting in trouble for false advertising. We should call it Love Made Simple and Hard.
You know what? It's wound up in it. You know, you can't get the simple without the hard.
That's true. There's a lot of things in life that are simple, but they're hard to do. You know, it's like, it's the right thing to do, but it's hard to do. It's, whether it's in sports or life or relationships, it really doesn't matter. From the outside looking in, it looks really like simple. But when you're in the fire and you're in the battle, you're in the war, you're in the huddle, whatever the case may be, it's different because there's an emotional charge. There's trauma, there's past failures that get in people's heads that make it really difficult when it's really not, So that our audience knows who they're talking to, Juan, kind of share with us your story. Like you have a unique story, just kind of share with us your story.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. For me, it's a great honor just to be able to share with those that are interested in poor little old me and my story, because, it's a story that's not unique to it's not unique to a whole lot of people. I mean, we've all had challenges in our lives, and I was no different. And what happened was, for me, at the ripe old age of 17, graduating from high school, I really felt lost and out of place. I didn't know where I was going. Didn't know if I was going to survive, to be honest with you. I had been identified. I was in special education through school, but they never told me particularly why. It was like I just didn't measure up. And so I went through school, graduated from high school, and that's led me to a pivotal point in my life. It's like, now where am I going to go? What am I going to do? And it was like, okay, I need to do something. I don't want to go to school anymore. That was where my identity was, and I didn't measure up there. So I decided, okay, let's see if I can get into the military. I got into the military, joined the Air Force, and that was the pivotal point for me in my life, because it showed me something that I had been experienced and had been exposed to, and that was love. But I had never seen it at the level that I had experienced it in the military. And a lot of people, and I have to draw a comparison, many people look at it and go like, how does the military and love have anything in common? And I try to tell people, I said, it's not the mission itself, it's how it's accomplished. That's the difference maker. And I think it was something that you were talking about earlier. It's like, it's the journey, not necessarily the outcome, that makes you see love in the military. And it's the what you do. It's a how you do it, not what you do. And so I saw that in the military, and it was a requirement. There was these attitudes, these characteristics that were very much necessary for the individual to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And that's what the military was all about. It's about being a part of something bigger than itself, than oneself, with a mission or a purpose that everybody could agree with, that's bigger than any individual. And that's what love was for me. It was allowed me to see my part in something bigger than myself. And so as a result, I had learned some things about myself that was fulfilled me to a level that I had never known that I could be at. You know, when I had confidence, I was assured of myself. I knew what my measure was. I knew my value. All of those things that I was lacking, that no one thought it was important enough for me to find out about myself in those 18 years of life, so to speak. I'd gotten it, gained it really relatively quick in the military because I was only in the military 9 years. But in that 9 years, I learned how to demonstrate, how to put love into action. And that was basically how I came to the point of realizing that a lot of the things that we talk about love, it's not really putting it to action. It's a feeling, it's an emotion, but it's never used so that one could really see it and put it in its proper perspective and make it practical. And so, long story short, we fast forward to like 5 years ago, and I write this book called Love Made Simple: The Guide to Inner Peace, Contentment, and Success. And from that point, we have basically a nonprofit. I founded a nonprofit called Clear Journey, which the book and the foundation of the nonprofit is the book and the love mindset. And it's basically, how do we make love practical in our everyday life? And that's what we do over at our nonprofit at Clear Journey, is that we help people navigate life, transform lives through using the power of love, using the characteristics, the attitudes of love, so that you can navigate not only one, but all aspects of life.
Okay, that's a lot. So it sounds like to me you found your identity when you got in the military and you saw yourself differently than perhaps you saw yourself prior to that. High school can be brutal, especially if you're in special ed. You were, you know, not the BMOC on campus. You were not leading the theater play. You were not the quarterback on the football team, all those type of things. How do you see the absence of love in our society today?
How do I see it?
Yeah.
It's demonstrated in every area of our lives as it pertains to the struggles and the challenges that we're having. It's in how we process, how we are solving our problems, how we are, or lack of the inability of solving them correctly and properly. Because here's what love does: love not only solves the problems that will solve the problem for me, but for those that are around me also. It's not something that's selfish. And right now, we are operating in a very selfish culture, a very selfish environment. And so we can see how it's being neglected based on how we're acting towards one another. We're not demonstrating it. We want somebody to give it to us, that is love, but we don't want to demonstrate it to others. And what that takes is a sacrifice. In many cases, it takes, I'll give you my definition of love. Love is the ability to act on behalf of another without anything in return, without any expectation of anything in return. And for the purpose of it is that we have everything in common. We have everything in common. We seek to be divisive instead of inclusive. And with that being the case, we're always going to be we're going to be missing out on the benefits of love.
Okay, so the selfishness, what's the root cause of selfishness? Because in a lot of ways, selfishness and love are antonyms, they're opposites,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Here's when selfishness has a place in the development of love for others. And that is when you're able to develop yourself. Selfishness is in the sense of developing yourself so that you can then give it to someone else. We all have to develop ourselves. And that's where it's, let's be all that we can be. Everybody's not the best athlete. It was because they had sacrificed some things to become that athlete that they have chosen or they have accomplished. That meant that they had to spend some time on themselves, and that's selfish. Look, I'm going to put in the work on me so that I can in turn give it to others. And so that's the only time that we can look at it in the sense of being about me. And it's how what I can do for me benefits someone else. We all have that ability. We all have to do that because we can't give what we don't have. And we have to develop that which we have to give. And so, Yeah, there's a time, but what we've done is we've transposed that, and now we're going to take it on to being selfish into what I can get from someone else, what I can take from someone else. And that's not what it's intended to be. So that's why it's very difficult when we use selfishness along with love. They don't belong together. But so many times we look at love and we go like, what's in it for me? No. When we're talking about love, it's like, what do you have to offer? What are you bringing to the table?
So is it fair to say that if you don't, the lack of self-development creates a person that is more apt to be selfish because they don't have that you can't give what you don't have. And so if you haven't really fully embodied who God created you to be, you can't pass it on.
That's a very interesting way that you put it. I haven't heard it put that way before, but in essence, you're absolutely right. But the problem that precedes that is that we don't know that we have that the reason and our purpose is to give. See, we've heard this saying, it's great, it's better to give than to receive. And we think that that's the most craziest thing in the world. That comes from a selfish mindset. If you thought about that from a very selfless mindset, you could gravitate to that in a minute. But unfortunately, we don't have that mindset. And so as a result, when someone says something that makes that kind of sense, we go like, oh, that's crazy. It's not better to give than to receive. But understand this, you can't give what you don't have. And if you're able to give, that means you have to give. That means that you've been fulfilled. You have an abundance to be able to give. We run into problems sometimes where we give more than we have. And that's a problem because you're operating outside of what you have, your own gifts. That's not it. That's not good either. But when you're right there where you're supposed to be and you have an abundance of it, man, it's so easy to give it because it's in you. It just pours out of you.
Okay, so for our listeners that are contemplating, how do I build a love mindset? What are the steps to build a love mindset?
First thing is, I guess we've already touched on it a little bit, and that is the desire to want to make the transformation. Because the thing is that the real root of this thing is that we've got to change our mindset. We got to look at the thing and says, look, I can't getting the results that I'm looking for. See, if we think about the pro mindset that you have to deal with your athletes and stuff like that, you have to realize that many people that are athletes understand this. And that is, it's not until I realize that I've got to put the work in if I want to be able to get the accomplishment out of it. I think about Steph Curry and the amount of jump shots that he takes a year, a month, a week. He doesn't make those shots in the games if he hasn't done those 3,000 jump shots in the gym when nobody's watching. And it's the work. And that's a mindset. That's an attitude that you have to have in place. So the first thing we got to do is to say, okay, look, I've got to change the way I think about this thing. I've got to be willing to do the work because I've got to get to the point where either I want to do it or I'm sick and tired of getting the results that I'm getting. If I never get sick and tired of getting the results, and like I tell people, I said, I'm going to present to you an alternative. If you like doing what you're doing, the way you're doing it, keep doing it. But if you're not happy, if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, then try another way. Decide that you want to make a transfer. You want to transform your life into something that's bigger than yourself. And I'm going to tell you, when you connect to something bigger than yourself, doors will open up that you will have never understood or know why they've opened up for you. Because as you've just talked about, and I think we talked about it off camera before we started as it relates to the experience with your wife and the connections that you build as a result of being a part of something bigger than yourself. It transcends what you can do by yourself. And the next thing you said, what is the steps? The second step is to understand you need help. You're not in this thing alone. And when you realize that you're not in it by yourself, and here's the thing, nobody is in it by themselves. Nobody. And when you can accept the fact that nobody is doing this thing by themselves, you then begin to see the need that, guess what? Our journey is to connect with others. It's to connect. And it's now, once we begin to connect, guess what? We begin to flow and give those things that we have to give, because people only connect to people that have something to offer. We don't connect with people that don't have anything to offer. And if we do, we find ourselves connected to something that's a burden instead of something that's going to bring value. And that's where you got to recognize value versus burden. And so, and then the last thing is that you have what it is to give. You then begin to see that you begin to be fulfilled because someone else needs what you have. That brings you fulfillment. This journey is about fulfillment and service. And when you can get there and you have this simple process, this simple steps here, remove selfishness, realize that you need help, and then begin to give that which you have. Fulfillment is every one of us reaches the fulfillment in this experience called life.
In my mind, you just described a team building event or exercise where everybody has an asset, but they don't have what the other people on the team have. And that one asset will not accomplish the goal or the task. It's only when you utilize everybody's assets with the right mixture and whatnot that you actually can accomplish whatever you're trying to accomplish. It creates teamwork. And it's when those games are really symbolic because all of us have assets. We're not all great at everything. None of us have it all figured out. Perhaps you figured out, your lane, but you need what I know and I need what you know. What are the big, selfishness is one. What are the biggest love killers? Things that
Again, selfishness is probably the biggest one because that's our motivation. And motivation gets us over so many humps or stops us from getting over any type of challenges. See, because when we get to a point where it's like, I can't see a benefit for going over or going through that challenge, I won't. But when your motivation is greater than you, and the only way it can be greater than you is that it has to be motivated by selflessness. That's the only way. I look back on my military experience. I didn't necessarily have to want to do what had to be done. I did it because it was necessary to be done. The mission was greater than what my individual position was. And so I had to do it for the sake of the purpose, which was greater than my individual desire or want. And so I can't think of anything more devastating to love than motivation. If you're selfish, you can't demonstrate it. You just can't do it. It will not allow you to do it because love doesn't have any selfishness in it.
Okay, so my brain is searching for love killers. One of them's hate. Where does hate come from?
You know what? See, that's interesting because on an interview not too long ago, a person was asking me about forgiveness, and hate runs along line with that forgiveness because there is no benefit to hate. It's no benefit. And when I say it runs parallel to forgiveness, is because forgiveness is for the person who's doing the forgiveness, not the person who's done the offense. And so when you think about hate, there is no motivation. There's no benefit for hating anything or anybody. There's no benefit in it. It doesn't serve you nor the whole any good for you to hate. It's basically a misunderstanding that is you've led yourself to come to a point where I'm going to hate. It's a misunderstanding. It's a misinterpretation of what really is important. And it's selfishness at its root is selfishness. If you're going to hate, it's selfishness.
Okay, so you've done some prison ministry.
Mm-hmm.
What is the transformation that takes place for a lot of guys that are in prison where they maybe committed a hate crime and they change? How do they change? Why do they change? What changes for them to have a different heart disposition, 5 months, 5 years, whatever later?
See, I don't think I've ever run across a person who got convicted of a hate crime. But I would tell you this, if you were incarcerated as a result of any type of crime, okay, you really have to do some introspection. It has to do some introspection. And many times we don't want to see the work that needs to go on the inside. Because the first thing that you've got to accept and recognize is you got to get past the point. And this is what in many cases I dealt with the people that I dealt with. And that is that they had to realize that they were there for a reason. Okay. They were there for a reason. Now it's up to them to accept that and then gain the benefit of that reason for them being there. Now you can go through your time in denial, or you could do some introspection and begin to think about it as to how you got there. Because here's the point. At the end of the day, those were your actions that got you there. Those were your actions that got you there. Now the issue is now what mindset caused those actions? What mindset caused those actions? Now, if those actions, that mindset was driven out of selfishness, therein lies where you have to stop and begin to evaluate. See, our culture is not one. See, we want to say the people who get caught is the problem. No, we have a culture of selfishness, and those ones that are incarcerated are those that got caught with the mindset of selfishness. That's all they are. And unfortunately, not everybody who has demonstrated selfishness has been caught with their hand in the cookie jar. But as a result, we're having to interact with them daily for whatever reason. I mean, aggressive drivers, people who slam the door in front of your face when you're walking through the store. There's always a kinds of people that you have to be confronted with. It at the root cause of it, it's selfishness. If you want to get down to it, they think that they're better than you are. We can't see our similarities, thinking that we're better. One's better than the other.
Okay, how do you explain the situation where you're walking in a store and the person knows you're there, but they maybe don't see you, but they feel you, and they do let the door shut right in front of you, compared to the situation where just the opposite. They feel it, and you're actually farther away from the door than they thought, and they continue to hold the door for a couple extra steps so that you can get the door. What impact do people have on people that are selfish, but the people that almost like the energy bubble we're in, our karma, whatever you want to call it?
Mm-hmm.
How does that impact someone's selfishness? Because there's probably a fair chance that people that are selfish aren't selfish all the time.
Or you're saying that they don't know that they're selfish.
Well,
or are you saying that it's premeditated when they feel like it?
Actions are not in alignment with their selfishness all the time.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. And the reason being is because there's nothing to demonstrate and have a need to demonstrate it. Here's the point. If it's love, it acts all the time. It acts out. Remember I said the definition? It's acting on behalf of another. That's the mindset. So if I'm coming into any type of interaction with you, you're my objective. You're the person that I'm want to work on behalf of. I'm acting on behalf of those who I come in contact with. I can't do this sometime. That's my motivation for loving all the time. I can't pick and choose who I want to demonstrate this mindset that I'm referring to, because that's what it is. That's my MO. That's the way I operate. So it's when you say, did it happen? They do it sometime and they don't do it other times. Love is intentional. I think that needs to just sit there. It's intentional. And just as it not doing it is intentional.
Well, it's ironic that the athletic teams that seem to get to championships seem to win the big one. There's a lot of love and respect by and between the teammates. And they may not be best friends, but they've got respect and love for each other. And they are playing for one another. And they are unselfish. And when you've got in football running back by committee, or you've got some type of situation where one guy doesn't get to be the star because there's another guy that's maybe younger and almost as good, they find a way to make it work if they win. And on the other side of the coin,
go ahead.
Teams that have a tendency to lose, they're very selfish-minded. They're all trying to get their bag. They're all trying to make their highlights. They're all looking out for them. And you see that even in the NFL in December and January at the end of the season when a team's been eliminated from the playoffs, they get very selfish.
I want to share something with you. I heard Jaden Daniels had an interview yesterday. They started minicamp. And he made a comment about how he connects with his teammates. And he said something I think that most people don't recognize or realize as to what makes a team work, what makes it work. He says, you don't establish the type of winning camaraderie or the winning attitude on the field. You build it off the field. And what do you mean? What does he mean by that? He said, and this is right up the alley here. He says it's when problems on the field occur, the confrontation that will be on the field is based on the relationship that was built off the field. See, confrontation is going to come. You know, he's got a job to do. Everybody's on the field got a job to do. But until they can, and it's how each one of them will take that criticism or that challenge at that moment is going to dictate whether or not they're going to be successful or not. And so that is phenomenal to understand that cohesiveness that you might see on the field comes from that relationship that was built off the field in how you manage challenges on the field. And that's awesome because if you don't have that, because guess what? There's some things that are going to happen on the field that, you know, look, I see something that you don't see, and I'm going to give it to you just as raw as I saw it. And you've got to be able to take it, not in the heat of the moment, but in the value of the relationship that's built off the field.
And I would also say similarly that in like marriages, the challenges that you face and your reaction to those are a direct reflection of the relationship you create in between the time periods between challenges.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, and the word trust pops in my mind in both relationships and in sports. There's got to be an enormous amount of trust between the coaches and the players, between the quarterback and the O-line, between the quarterback and the receivers. You know, it's going all different directions. There's got to be trust. And when there's trust, this is what I see. When there's trust, when the quarterback trusts a guy and he gets beat and the quarterback gets killed, there's no response. The quarterback doesn't respond. He knows it was an aberration. We know this is not the normal operating procedure. This was just a fluke. Hey, the defensive guy gets paid too. He's a professional as well. And sometimes he's going to beat, you know, one guy's going to beat the other. But the quarterback has no response. It's like next play. And when the quarterback doesn't trust those guys, he typically shows frustration. But most of the time he doesn't show it against that guy. He almost, sometimes you'll see him yell at the coaches like that was a dumb play, right? Because he doesn't want to destroy whatever relationship he does have with that guy, because the next play he needs them to protect him again. So he can't dog cuss him or anything, but you see those players express an emotional response in some direction when that happens.
Absolutely. It's a breakdown. It's a breakdown in that relationship that it supersedes the moment. And the moment became bigger than whatever the relationship was that they had or had put together, had built. Because I have to understand and know that you have my best interest in mind, just as well as you know that I have your best interest in mind. I'm not going to put you intentionally in a compromising position and you vice versa. And that goes coaches and players, position players, linemen, all of us. You know, we're in this thing together. And I'm not going to put you in a compromising position so that you can't win, so that we can't win.
Jaden Daniels has done a phenomenal job out there. In 1 year, he's given the whole Commander Redskin Nation hope that these guys can go places. I mean, they won a playoff game and beat the number 1 seed and on the road and all this stuff. So the sky's the limit if they can pay the receiver.
Well, I mean, it was a perfect storm though, because I don't think that we haven't had good athletes in Washington over the last 20 years, but unfortunately, success starts at the top.
Yeah, there's a million stories about that. Dan Snyder was one of one.
Unfortunately, you can't cover it up either. When you look at the statistics, you look at the numbers, you can't cover it up.
Yeah. Okay, so Juan, you had something happen at 37 years old. Share with everybody what happened at 37.
That was an aha moment that made my life journey, gave it a little bit more clarity. Up until that point, I had been fighting a ghost. I'd spoken to you about the fact that I was in special education. And the special education, no one really told me what my problem was other than the fact that I didn't measure up. So they put me in special education. At 37 years old, now let's put it in perspective. I've gone to the military, came back from the military, would say after 9 years, was relatively successful in the military. I got out as an E5, had just re-enlisted, but put it into context. It was right after Desert Storm, and they were downsizing the military. So I took the early out and got out because I had gotten this revelation, this inside information as it relates to this love mindset. But at that age of 37, I realized that I had a learning disability. And that learning disability was a memory deficiency, which in turn explained how difficult everything that I tried to accomplish was. But my accomplishment preceded me knowing about it because I had built up that tenacity. I had built up that responsibility, those attitudes of love inside of me that would not allow me to quit, would not allow me to lose at life. But it was so clarifying to know that I no longer had to fight that ghost. And I tell you, at that point, things began to be I became liberated. I was liberated because up until then, I was fighting a ghost. It was like, why do I have to struggle so hard? Why do I have to work so hard? Why do I have to go through so much? Because everything, it was literally like it went in one ear and out the other. And I had to then find the way, but I had already beat it before I even knew what it was, to be able to get to the point where I was in life. Because I remember when I took the test to find out that I had the learning disability, the guy who administered the test to me was like, I can't understand. I don't know how you got to where you are in life without knowing this.
So what was your adaptation? What was your method for overcoming your learning disabilities related to maybe inability to remember things at maybe an average level? I'm just making this up. I don't know.
Well, here's my biggest ace in the hole, and that was what I had to deal with, and that was to realize that first and foremost, I had to accept help. Okay, and it was in a way in which I demonstrated my desire to want to be a part of other operations, other situations, and allow myself to learn on my own schedule. I had to accept and embrace the fact that I wasn't going to do it on my own. And there was so much that I didn't know that I didn't know. I needed to embrace myself, the opportunity to learn as much as I can, whenever I can. So I was open to learning. That was something that while I was in school, I had no idea the value of learning. It was so frustrating to learn that I didn't want to do anything about it. So my thing was I needed to find a way to learn my way. And so I figured out to be being a participant, being involved in things was ways that I would learn. And then I would learn it in a way that I would make it practical. I would apply it as I was learning it. So I began to be hunger and thirst to want to know. That was the key thing. And then the fact that I wasn't going to be held up by time. See, time, when you put a timer on me, I froze. So I tried to work in environments and in situations where there was no time involved, where I could actually do what I knew I needed to do, not knowing what was my problem, but I knew if I had enough time, I could do it. So I began to put myself in position in places where I could be able to navigate the experience on my terms. So those were the things that really helped me to get to the place where I am today, and even allowed me to be able to retire at 55 years old and start my own nonprofit and write my book and begin to speak and teach on the fact of this love mindset, because this thing works when you actually put the effort and the work in to changing your attitudes, because that will indeed change your outcome on life. Because I was hopeless with no directions, no instructions, no directions or guidance, but I incorporated these principles, these attitudes and ideas in my daily actions. And they showed themselves to be beneficial in everything I did, not only for myself, but for those that are around me. And it's that ability to be, okay, say, I'm only a small part, but I know my part. I know my part. And when it connects to other people, people can see the value that I bring because they need what I have.
What's interesting is that when you understand maybe 20 years after high school what the issue was, and for those 2 decades, you adapted, you figured it out, you found a way. And I think a lot of us do that because I don't think at any given time in our lives do we always know what our situation is. And a lot of times later in life, it's revealed to us. But I think the cool thing is that you had the motivation, the attitude, the perspective, just to like keep going. And I think if there's any message in today, besides just the whole love thing, is despite being imperfect, despite being inadequate, you can still be successful.
Just given the tools, finding your space, that thing that's uniquely yours makes you valuable, because that's what it's all about. No one's a mistake. Everybody has purpose. Everybody has uniqueness that no one else has. I think many of us fail to realize that we are an original.
Yeah, we're all made in the likeness of God, but we're all one of one. We're all unique.
And we were here for a reason.
Yep. So that kind of begs the question. I think social media, our culture, maybe even the school system, the sociology of our school system is all about finding problems with our uniqueness. And our real value is in our uniqueness. And because of peer pressure and everything else, we don't want to be different. We want to fit in. Well, the people that embrace their uniqueness are the ones that are really recognized. And the people that want to fit in are the ones buying tickets to watch them play or watch them sing.
Absolutely.
Right. So my recommendation to everybody is embrace your uniqueness. Find out what it is. Find out why you have it, what you can use it for, how it can benefit the world, how it can benefit your family, because that's where that's your zone of genius. Wherever your weakness, wherever your uniqueness is, equals your zone of genius.
I would agree.
What's your challenge for our audience? Give me a challenge to pass on to these guys.
Hey, I think if I was to give, suggestion to someone who's really looking through life and wanting to know that their outcomes are based on their attitude. Your attitude will directly impact your outcome. You've got to have that positive attitude, that attitude that will direct you in the direction so that you can see, not only hear it from someone else's mouth, but understand your attitude will determine the steps that you will take that will allow you to get to the outcome that you are desiring.
I'm going to challenge the audience to a similar concept, just a little bit different nomenclature. Mind, pro-mindset, mind, how we think. How you think determines your future. If you don't like your present and you want to change your future, you have to change how you think. And how you think is also connected to your attitude.
Absolutely. It's a love mindset.
It's a love mindset. And if you look at the best of the best, even in sports, they all think differently. You know, you were talking about Steph Curry. Steph Curry thinks differently. You know, those kind of guys, maybe Jaden Daniels is one of those guys. Maybe it's still too early to tell, but they think differently and they do different too, and they do more. So,
Yeah.
well, Mr. Juan Lee, I want to thank you for being on Pro Mindset today and talking about love mindset and just talking about life. If somebody wants to find you or find your book, why don't you share where they can track you down?
Hey, you can go to my website. It's aclearjourney.org, and you can find out everything you need about me. It can direct you to all my social media. You can find the book. It's on Audible and it's on Amazon. I'm all over the place. I have a YouTube channel where we have our podcasts. Our podcasts are called It's called The Philosophy of Love and Its Life. And so those are the different places that you can find me. All of it is all under clearjourney.org.
And there you have it. And this may date me, but I remember the Love Boat, but you got the love mindset.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for being on Pro Mindset today.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Hey, it's Craig Domann, the host of Pro Mindset Podcast. I want to thank you for listening or watching today's show. And you can catch us every week on the normal social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and all the listening podcast platforms. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And more importantly, I hope you gained a pro mindset insight. Please be sure to rate and review Pro Mindset Podcast. And I look forward to catching up with you on our next show.